Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Matt Rhule, Nebraska, working their way through fall camp, and there's no better way to say it besides that it's about to get real for Nebraska during fall camp. It is one thing to stand out during summer workouts in the weight room. It's one thing to stand out when you're shorts and a t-shirt kicking off fall camp. When the pads start coming on, the bullets start to get a little bit more real. And as you work your way through fall camp, that's when you really get a feel for, hey, who are the football players that are going to be our difference makers? And just as importantly, hey, who are the football players that are going to show up every single day during fall camp in the meeting rooms, on the practice fields, and show that we can rely on them to do their job on Saturdays? That's kind of what we're starting to find out. Pads came on for Nebraska last night. I want to talk about some surprise standouts, guys that maybe I didn't have on my bingo card that are starting to show they can be dudes for Nebraska in 2025. Want to talk about some of the new faces as well, but I want to start with this. Matt Rhule got up there and said something that I've kind of been thinking about a lot during the offseason, and that is the depth of this football team, just the amount of players that we trust to play. That number seems to be a lot higher than it was year one, year two under Matt Rhule. And what I mean by that is there were times for Nebraska during Matt Rule's first 2 years that you had to play guys out of position. You had to play guys banged up. You had to play guys that weren't ready to play. And it's just the depth on this roster wasn't where it needed to be. And look, it ain't flashy to talk about depth. It's a lot more fun to talk about your star quarterback, Dylan Raiola, Dane Key coming in at wide receiver. When you want to do what Nebraska wants to do under Matt Rhule, you got to be deep. You got to have guys you trust in the 2 and 3 deep. Matt Rhule was talking about how we're, as a staff, we're trying to figure out how to get all of our good football players on the field. He mentioned the jack linebacker spot where you have a guy like McGahee, and you have a guy like Deshaun McCough. You have a guy like Jordan Acho who is starting to show out as well. We're playing around with how to get all those players on the field at the same time because we think they're all guys that can help our football team. Go back to the first 2 years. It was a stark difference. You were playing guys at wide receiver that probably weren't Big Ten caliber dudes. You were playing guys in the secondary last year for Nebraska that were woefully out of position because you didn't have enough depth at that position. Certainly happened on the offensive line at times as well. The thing that feels the most different for Nebraska going into 2025, we finally feel like we have a deep football team. We got a lot of guys who are above the line. Above the line meaning, hey, we trust to play on Saturdays. That's probably what stands out to me the most. Now, it's kind of funny because we're working through fall camp and we're not talking about Dylan a lot at quarterback. To me, Dylan's a known commodity going into 2025. I think he gets better with Dana Holgerson. But I think the bigger conversation is, hey, what's around the quarterback? And can we maximize what this Nebraska offense can be in 2025? Those are some of the conversations we're going to get into. Before we do, and as always, the Nebraska fans, appreciate you guys. It been a blast and going to be a blast talking this football team. This is year 3 for Matt Rhule. And I think it's not just hype and it's not just hope. Like, I think there are legitimate expectations from this Nebraska fan base that this is the year this program takes a step. And I don't blame the Nebraska fans for thinking that at all. I think it's the best roster we've seen Nebraska have in a very long time. Going to be fun. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, this is not necessarily a surprise standout, but I feel like we ain't talking about this kid, and he might be my favorite player on this roster, Jacory Barney. There's obviously a lot of attention going to Dylan. And I think in the wide receiver position that there's a lot of attention going to guys like Danke and freshmen like Cortez Mills. Jacory Barney, to me, might be the wide receiver one on this football team still. And that's high praise because I think Danke's a really, really good football player. Why should we make sure we're not forgetting about Jacory Barney? Really, two different reasons. Number one, he's only going into year 2. He was dang good as a freshman. He's probably only getting better going into year 2. But number two, I look at Jacory Barney and say he fits what Dana Holgerson wants to do to a T. Now, Dana Holgerson is as much as we like to talk about the scheme that he likes to run, he is a player's guy. Hey, how can we get our football players in space and let them do the rest? That there's not a better football player to be in this Dana Holgorsen offense than Jacory Barney, because that's what he does. He is one of the more dynamic football players that you see in the Big Ten with the football in his hands. Dana Holgorsen is going to figure out so many different ways to get Jacory Barney involved with the football in space. That's number one. Number two, there's probably a step that can be taken with Jacory Barney as a pure wide receiver, and we're starting to hear that step being taken. What I mean by that is go back to last year. Yes, Jacory Barney was very productive for a freshman wide receiver. At times, especially with Coach Satterfield running the offense, it felt like he was kind of just used as a gadget guy, end arounds and screens and some of the quick game. And look, that ain't going away. But we going to continue to use Jacory Barney like that because we're trying to figure out ways to get him the football in space. But I think he can be a little bit more than just a gadget wide receiver. This guy has elite movement skills and really good ball skills, really good hands. We can use him down the field as a route runner as well. So, hey, we're going to continue to find creative ways to get him the football. But we're also going to treat him like a wide receiver going into year two, a polished wide receiver that has a deep route tree that can run a lot of routes and do a lot of different things. That's what excites me the most about Jacory Barney. I don't forget about him. There is as good as I think Dane Key is, there's a very good chance that Jacory Barney still leads this team in targets, leads this team in receiving yards, really could be an all Big Ten wide receiver. And we're not used to talking about Nebraska wide receivers like that in the last couple of years. I think he's only going to get. Now, I know I'm kind of hammering home the Jacory Barney take, but I got one more thing that kind of popped into my brain. With Dane Key on the outside and his verticality, like safety's going to have to respect that. You're probably going to see a lot of two deep safeties because a guy like Dane Key. Well, that opens up not a lot of, one, opportunity in the run game. Nebraska's been trying to run the football and they've been banging their head against the wall because the vertical passing attack hasn't always been there. And so these safeties are kind of coming into the box and adding hats to the run game. So one, you're going to run the football better. But number two, hey, if these safeties are respecting Dane Key, there's probably some more space underneath for Jacory Barney to operate with the football. We're hearing all the right things from this kid, and I feel like we haven't talked enough about him. Number two, offensive line starting to take form. And look, my take on the offensive line is this might be the position group I have quietly the most confidence in. And what I mean by that is, one, it's the deepest offensive line that Matt Rhule's had, and that ain't even close. But number two, that's been a position where we've seen improvement. Like we ain't projecting player development, we've seen player development. They've gotten that right. So you have, in my opinion, the adequate depth. You've shown that this coaching staff, I think, is getting these players better within the program. The interior offensive line, we already know what it's going to be. Justin Evans at center and Rocco and Henry at two guard spots. That's a really good battery on the inside, at least I think. We're trying to figure out tackles. I think what Nebraska's trying to do is, hey, we want to make sure we trust three of them. And I think that's Elijah Pritchett, Gunnar Gatula, and Teddy P. We're cross-training him. Elijah Pritchett spent some time at right tackle, spent some time at left tackle. You can say the same thing for Teddy as well. We want to make sure we got three tackles that we trust that can play both tackle positions. Look, I know three doesn't seem like a massive number, and that number might be a little bit higher. Like Tyler Knack, I think he might be able to be a trustworthy tackle as well. Maybe Turner Corcoran when he gets back, but I think we know enough about Turner where he probably, especially with him not practicing pretty much all off season long, I don't know if we trust him right now going into 2025. Three, I shouldn't say starting tackles, but three tackles that you trust. That's a pretty dang good number. There are a lot of programs across the country that don't even have two tackles they trust. Nebraska at times did not have two tackles they trust. I think you got three. And if you can stay healthy, having three tackles you trust, that's what it should look like going into the Big Ten. I think we're finally there. But we're cross-training them. We're trying to figure out, hey, one, what's their best positions? Elijah Pritchett, right tackle, left tackle. What do we trust them at more? But number two, we want them to be able to play both because that allows us to get our best five on the football field at a better rate. Like what I'm hearing from the offensive line. And Elijah Pritchett, to me, He's the guy you continue to monitor. If he can play the way he looks, if he can play the way he had 5 stars next to his name coming out of high school, it makes me view this Nebraska offense a little bit different. He's the key. I'm not sure if we totally trust him yet because it wasn't great at Alabama. But if he can kind of come into his own, break out of his shell a little bit, that's big for Nebraska on the offensive line. Running back depth emerging, Mekhi Nelson. Emmett Johnson is your clear running back one. I would be very surprised if we get a healthy Emmett Johnson for 12 plus games. He's going to be featured a lot in this offense, not only as a ball carrier, 20 plus carries a game. And that's a question we have is, hey, can Emmett Johnson take that amount of carries? I think he's clearly the best running back in the room. Quite frankly, I thought that 12 months ago as well. He's also going to be used as a pass catcher, especially with Dana Holgorsen. I mean, go back to the last couple of games with Dana calling the offense. Hey, we going to use Emmett Johnson in a lot more ways than just being a pure ball carrier. We do want to see some depth emerge. Quentin Ives dealing with an injury. You got a guy in Isaiah Mosey who's making the transition. Not sure if we can totally trust him yet. Jamarian Parker's dealing with an injury. Mekhi Nelson, lowly ranked 3-star kid that Nebraska took out of high school, kind of a late addition, trusted the evaluation. It sounds like they kind of like what they have there. And so we're not necessarily looking for another all Big Ten running back to step up in the room. I think you can have that with Emmett Johnson, but we got to have other guys we trust to tote the rock, spell Emmett Johnson, whether it's Quentin Hives, whether it's maybe Mekhi Nelson. That we're starting to hear the right things is probably the best way to put it going into 2025. Going to the defensive side of the football real quick. And look, I've been pretty vocal. This is where my questions lie. It's a little bit of a 180 from where we were the last 2 years. We trusted the Nebraska defense a lot the last 2 years. I'm not saying I don't trust Nebraska's defense. What I'm saying is that we have more question marks on this side of the football, right? The thing I will say is new faces on the defense, I think are looking the part. I think Nebraska is very happy with their evaluations that they made in the transfer portal. The new guys that are coming in, the names that are highlighted in red, we seem to be happy. Andrew Marshall has come in, I think, locked that cornerback spot down opposite Sayer right. That has the opportunity to be a very good cornerback duo for Nebraska. Deshaun McCullough has come in and provided a lot of juice at a very important position, that jack linebacker spot for Nebraska. I'm a monster fan. If you can use Deshaun McCullough the right way, which I don't think was happening at Oklahoma. He also had some injuries. I think this kid can be a really good football player. Go back to his true freshman year at Indiana in the Big Ten. It's been a while, but he showed us what he can do, especially coming off the edge. Matt Rhule got up there and said, not only are we happy with the players that we got, we're happy with the teammates that we got. Like, and that's important because year 3 Matt Rhule, why does everybody love the year 3 Matt Rhule storyline? One, because he's shown that he's a good player developer. So, hey, when he gets into year 3, a lot of these players have gotten a lot better. They're ready to play at a high level. But number 2, that's when his culture really digs in. What he said in the press conference was there's a lot of assimilation. Like the new faces that we added, they have come in and they're one of the guys in this locker room. They're operating like everybody else is operating, which I think's important, especially when you lean into the portal like Nebraska had to do in the offseason. You like the players, you like the teammates that you got. That's really good. The only thing that we're looking for, especially as the pads come on, is, hey, on the defensive line, do we trust enough bodies? If you were to tell me, hey, I don't need Nebraska's defensive line to be elite. I don't think it's going to be elite in 2025, but can it be solid? Can it be a deep unit that has solid play for Nebraska? Look, the engines of the defense can come at different positions. I think the secondary should be really good. I love the off-ball linebacker room. We don't need this defensive line to be a top 5 unit in the country, but can it be solid? Can we have some guys step up that can hold their own in the Big Ten? That's what we're looking for during fall camp. We're going to continue to talk about that storyline because if we start to hear guys like Riley Van Boppel and Elijah Judy, maybe a guy like Dylan Perry kind of step up and become guys we trust, that's big. It's probably the biggest question mark we have for Nebraska rolling into 2025. We'll pause it there. Appreciate you guys. A lot of expectations, and look, expectations that are backed up by substance. Like there's been years where Nebraska's had a lot of high expectations, and you looked at the roster and you didn't totally see the answers. You have a roster that you trust. You're going into year 3 with Matt Rhule. The high expectations are warranted for this football team in 2025. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.